Okay, so welcome everyone to our September monthly parent session. This session is regarding student integrity. And we do have two offices joining us. We have the Office of Student Conduct and Conflict Resolution. And for that, we have Ms. Jovita Simon. And then we also have the Office of Institutional Compliance and a Title IX coordinator, and that is Gabriel Ramirez. So thank you both for helping us with this session. We are going to go ahead and start with Gabriel, if you don't mind going first, if you want to give just a brief introduction of maybe your job description and then if you need any sharing capabilities or anything, or if you want to pass along the presentation, let me know, but it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening to you, Jessica, and thank you for inviting me here. And I want to thank also the UTEP Parents Association for having me here today. So my name is Gabriel Ramirez. I'm the Title IX coordinator here at UTEP. And just to give you all a sense of what it is I do, I basically oversee the sexual misconduct policy here on our campus. And that's what I'll talk about today, really is a sexual misconduct policy you know, how it relates to students, really that's going to be the focus. And specifically, what kind of support do we provide when, unfortunately, we hear about certain things like this that make their way to our office. So I'll go ahead and share a presentation that we have that we basically share with students. You'll just give me a second to set that up. Okay, so you should be able to see the presentation now, is that right?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, again, the focus today will be on as it relates to students, and I'll try to do a really quick rundown. This is it's a presentation that probably lasts really about 40 minutes, but I'll try to make it short and sweet as possible. That way there can maybe be some time for questions if anybody has any. So this is just kind of like, you know, generally what are we going to talk about today? And we'll talk a little bit about the law as it pertains to Title IX. You know, what does all this mean here at UTEP? Because we have a policy that's a lot broader than just what the federal regulations you know, stipulate that we implement here at our institution. What are some resources? I really want to highlight that. How do we support? How do we recommend that students do this? How do they support each other? How do they refer things? How do they report issues that come up to UTEP? What are our expectations of everyone here on campus? And again, whatever questions, comments, or concerns others have in relation to our policy. So real quickly, I don't want to beat this to death, but this is kind of stems from federal laws that were passed, amendments to the Education Amendments, excuse me, Civil Rights Act, Education Amendments Act 1972, that basically prohibited sex discrimination within institutions of education, and specifically those that receive federal funding. This covers a lot of different things. You might be more familiar with Title IX as it relates to, you know, equity in sports. Perhaps you're familiar with pregnancy and accommodations that can be given to students, for instance, under Title IX. Parenting and pregnancy are kind of combined and are together. Also covers like gender-based discrimination, right? Treating one gender favorably over another within institutions of education. And I think something that's becoming more prominent these days, people are more familiar, that it also covers sexual harassment. The reasoning behind this is to provide equal access to education, and that sex discrimination is basically prohibited. So these are individuals to contact. We have 4 coordinators on campus currently. So myself, I'm the Title IX coordinator. Like I said earlier, I'm tasked with overall overseeing the sexual misconduct policy on campus and adhering to any regulations or state laws such as Title IX. We also have Angela Flesh, our Dean of Students. Dr. Katie McCory-Andalise is also a Title IX deputy coordinator, and Director Tapia, who's our Director of Equal Opportunity, is also one. Any questions, comments, concerns can be brought forth to me. My direct line is 8358. I can be found at Kelly Hall, room 312. And you can also send an email to title9@utep.edu. Now, real quickly, what is sexual misconduct? It's not just sexual harassment. So you might be familiar with what people or what's called hostile environment within the workplace, within the educational setting, right? That's somebody that's getting unwelcome attention of a sexual nature, just very broadly kind of defining that. But our policy actually encompasses way more than that. So it also encompasses sex discrimination. So as I mentioned before, discrimination based on gender. Let's say female students aren't afforded the same opportunity as male students. That's the kind of thing that we're talking about there. It also covers, due to recent Department of Education guidance, it also covers when someone is discriminated against because of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. So all that falls within sex discrimination. We also have sexual harassment, which I think, as I mentioned before, people are kind of a little more familiar with that. Sexual assault, we're talking about rape, fondling, incest, and then folded into that are the different kinds of rape, which would be statutory or just forcible acts of rape, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking. Then we have a kind of broader, slightly broader term called other inappropriate sexual conduct that also falls within our policy. On top of that, anybody who's a participant is basically a part of filing a report or is a part of the process as it pertains to our sexual misconduct policy. So it brings forth a concern. If they're trying to even do something that's legally protected, such as trying to get a protective order, or they're trying to file a police report, anything like that tied to the sexual misconduct could be construed as retaliation, and that's prohibited in our policy. So just kind of go over some of the things as it kind of pertains to sexual assaults. And I know that this could be, if you happen to be a parent, I know this could be a little difficult to kind of think about, especially as it pertains to your children. But we want to make sure that we let you know, and of course we inform our students of what's, the appropriate behavior here when students engage in that kind of activity. And so we think it's helpful if you understand what consent means and what some of these other terms mean as it pertains to sexual activity. And so consent at UTEP, really what it is something that's voluntary, it's mutually understandable, and clearly indicates a willingness to participate in each sexual act. So what does that mean? Well, it can't be coerced, right? It's not something that can be forced upon another person. It also has to be mutually understandable. What one person may come to understand as an agreement to engage in this activity doesn't necessarily mean that the other person understands that as well. So we'd have to understand if this would be something that would be understood by both individuals to engage in this activity. And I think another thing that's probably not well known is that people don't always understand that it's at every stage, at every engagement in sexual activity, as that transitions or as that changes, there has to be an agreement between those individuals or perhaps even groups of people that they wish to engage further in sexual activity. So as I mentioned, just because you agree to engage in sex with one person doesn't mean you agree to engage in sex with somebody else. It can be withdrawn at any time. So, kind of again, thinking about each sexual act, right? And even within the course or during the course of that act, a person can decide that they no longer wish to participate in that. Current or previous dating relationship is not enough to say that you consent to sexual activity. There may be a habit between those individuals in terms of when they, typically engage in sex, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, at every point a person is willing to do that. And as I mentioned before, it can't be coerced or forced, generally speaking. So some behaviors that could violate policy. This pertains to stalking as this first instance, but following somebody, circulating explicit content online, commenting on someone's body, their looks. This is going more towards a kind of harassing environment. Sexually touching somebody without their consent, that could possibly be fondling. Sex discrimination, I talked about that before. Retaliation also spoke about. Recording consensual sexual activity without consent of everyone could also potentially be a violation. Knowingly transmitting diseases. And then we have domestic or dating violence. I'll really quickly just say, domestic violence is kind of confined to when you have cohabitation, you have a child in common. Those are the kinds of things in terms of domestic violence. Dating violence is that there's some kind of intimate relationship between the two, but there's no cohabitation, there's no kind of familial connection in that sense, but there's still violence that occurs. So that's just kind of a general distinction between those two things. Reporting, there's lots of ways to report. Ideally, we prefer that people report to our online reporting form. It's a really easy form to use. You can use a Title IX email. Don't really recommend that. It goes out to a bunch of coordinators and whatnot. But nonetheless, if that's the way that you feel most appropriate to bring something to our attention, then you can do that. You can always call me. You can send me directly an email as well at g@ramirez2@utep.edu. And someone can always stop by our office at Kelly Hall, room 312. It's essentially as you exit Sumble coming east. If you exit and you barely turn onto Sumble, it's basically going to be the first parking lot on your right-hand side. That building there, that's Kelly Hall. And so just kind of going a little bit about employee expectations, I just want you to kind of broadly know employees have a responsibility to report both under policy and state law. And in fact, Texas has one of the strictest laws when it comes to reporting certain forms of sexual misconduct. So sexual harassment as defined under state law, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking are required to be reported by an employee under a given set of circumstances. So not always the case, but essentially if they're working and they receive this information, it involves a UTEP student or employee, they have to report it. If they don't do that, then the employee, if they're found in violation of policy, will be terminated from the institution and possibly criminally charged. So as I said, it's one of the strictest reporting obligations as it pertains to sexual misconduct in the entire country. We also have a broader employee obligation that covers other categories of sexual misconduct and essentially requires them to report as well to the institution when they receive that information. So I really want to highlight this. I think when people think of our office, sometimes they think right away that we're going to begin an investigation. This thing's going to become public. All these people are going to know all these things, and quite frankly, this is confidential information under state and federal law. So we only let people know on a need-to-know basis. And the other thing is that we provide support to anybody who's reported as a victim of sexual misconduct. So our policy is broader than the federal regulations, which require only that the institution respond when there's allegations that pertain to on-campus conduct, or involves a program or activity of the institution. But we actually go beyond that. Basically, when we hear somebody's been affected by something like this, they're reported as a victim, we reach out to them and we offer them support. And so we like to clear that up with whoever we speak to, because really only the person who's reported as a victim can file a complaint, or myself, under a limited set of circumstances, typically when there's some kind of safety concern or something related to that. So we really do reach out to provide the support. For students, we work in conjunction with the Dean of Students Office, and they will offer to that student assistance ranging from, can we move your parking situation? Do you need a campus escort? Would you like a course change or a scheduling change? Is there something we can do in terms of working with your assignments with your professors or things of that nature? Because ultimately what we're trying to do is to make sure that they get access to their education. And so I just want to stress that we do provide that assistance to anybody who's reported as a victim that belongs to our institution. And even those who don't, if they have in the past, we still will reach out to them and try to offer them some resources. So, investigation, we're looking at the processes if there is a complaint filed. And so there'll be an investigation, evidence gathering. Ultimately, there'll be reports written. And depending on the allegations and who it's against, I won't go into like super detail about that, but it could go to a hearing. And at that hearing, there could be cross-examination through advisors. It's a very kind of detailed process. And if you're really interested in that, I would encourage you to look at our sexual misconduct policy for more information on what the investigation and hearing process looks like. We do have trained hearing officers. We're all trained. We receive lots of training through UT system. It's a system of schools that UTEP belongs to. And we take lots of other trainings as well. So some resources here. I also want to let you all know that, depending on the resource recommended, it could be confidential or not confidential. So as I mentioned before, there are reporting obligations here at UTEP. And so, depending on who you talk to, and that police department needs to be changed a little bit, but depending on who you talk to, the information could be confidential or not. Basically, they'll either share it with our program or not. So if you speak to our campus advocacy, resources and education, you speak to student health and wellness or counseling and psychological services counselors, any one of those individuals, they're confidential employees and they don't have to provide me with information about what allegedly happened. They can assist the student, provide them with resources. And all they'll tell me is that there was an incident reported. They won't say names. It's just a stalking, let's say, on this date, and that's it. Not confidential employees. Police department can be a confidential employee as it relates to sexual assaults if there's a pseudonym form filled out. That's a recent change within the state law. But basically, if it's otherwise, then the police department does have to report any information related to the incident to Telling program. Any staff or faculty member, dean of students office, for instance, all those individuals would have to report. Excuse me. So we also have CASV. We have an MOU with them. El Paso Police Department has a victim services unit. They assist with everything related to stalking, sexual assaults. Really great services that they have. So does CASV. They have really great services, everything from housing, financial assistance. They provide advocacy. They even have an officer that works there that can do reports. So a lot of great resources there as well. Casa Amiga in Ciudad Juarez also provides a lot of assistance to families in need. Fort Bliss has a family advocacy program, and then UMC, mainly we highlight them because they do things like sexual assault, nurse examinations, for instance. And they can provide that assistance, and we can also help assist with those as well. And guiding people to them is what I mean. So what we urge students to do is to listen, be compassionate. As you look, it's not on here, but we have a tagline as a part of our branding, which is, we support UTEP's culture of care. President Wilson really loves to highlight that, we're a caring community, and that's what we like to do as well. And so we tell, both employees and students who may receive this information, please listen, please be, compassionate with that person who's bringing this concern to you. Let them know that you appreciate the trust they have in you. Give them the options, give them the resources. If you know them, let them know that they can contact our office and we can provide that as well. And then, you could even escort them, just again, lending that hand to help someone out in a time of need. And then share what reporting to the university would look like, right? So kind of letting them know, hey, even if you contact the Title IX program, they're going to provide resources to you. They'll let you know that you have rights and options. One of them being you could file a complaint if you want to, but it's not necessary. So kind of leaving that up to them, letting them know that there are options that they have, and basically that they can come to us for that. And then just be encouraging, let them know that they did a positive thing, right? And something that they're reporting to them that's really difficult. So with that being said, that concludes my presentation. And so if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to respond with the 8 minutes that I have left.
So one thing that I do want to recommend, if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat and we can answer them throughout the time. But I did want to ask Gabriel, what is, in your definition, coercion?
So, coercion does have a really, specific connotation, but I would look more broadly than that. And I would think if something is being done that, a person, it's apparent that they're not willing to do it, right? Then we're entering the point of coercing somebody to do something, right? So if they've said, no, I don't really want to, or they look uneasy, by the proposition, those kinds of things is what somebody should be looking for, if they're looking toward consent, right?
Okay, thank you. Again, if anyone has any questions, you're welcome to put those in the chat. But thank you so much, Gabriel. We can move on with Jovita, who is the director of OSCCR. Do you need any sharing capabilities, or are you good to share on your end?
Yes, I would need the capabilities to share so I can provide my presentation.
I think you should.
Oh,
have,
I was,
yes.
Yep, I have it.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being invited, as well as my colleague Gabriel Ramirez. As Jessica stated, my name is Jovita Simon, and I function as a director for the Office of Student Conduct and Conflict Resolution. So what is it that we do within our office? Please note that there are many investigations and adjudications that we do as it relates to possible violations of policy. However, one of the things that I want to make sure that you all understand is that we are here. I apologize, my camera was not on. We are here to support and educate our university community as it relates to faculty, staff, as well as students overall. I understand that the majority of my audience today is family members, parents and such of our students. And so I want to give you a brief overall synopsis as it relates to our investigation process and other things that we actually do here in our office. So overall, again, as I shared with you all, we are charged with investigating and adjudicating the cases that are referred to our office. That can include cases of student conduct violations, and we'll go over as it relates to what that means, academic integrity violations, and anything else that may be referred to our office as it relates to resolution. If conflict resolution, so if a student comes to our office stating that they have a concern or conflict with another student and or a faculty member, we guide them and provide them information on how to mediate and resolve that conflict. We also provide resources. Please note that one of the biggest things that we have seen from our students is that a lot are not understanding or informed of what resources we have available here on campus. Please note that we have a plethora of resources, and I know it's easy for me to say, we can look them up on the internet, but please note that if at any point in time a student needs to have a conversation with them and have that guidance in regards to providing resources such as being referred to the Center of Accommodations for Student Support Services, military, housing and residential life if they need housing assistance, counseling and psychological services. Again, overall, we are able to have those conversations with the students. Additionally, educational programming. So what does this mean, or what does this entail? These are presentations like we're doing today, so we can inform our university community members of what we do and the resources, again, that we have here on campus. Additionally, we want to make sure that we are continually continue to program and provide educational resources so students, faculty, and staff are aware of what policies we have available. Additionally, for example, like this week, we have National Hazing Awareness Week. And so we want to make sure that students are aware and informed of what hazing entails, so they will make informed decisions in regards to what to look out for. And additionally, please note that a lot of students after graduation or while they're still in school, they apply for other jobs and or look to go to graduate school. And please note that within that, we do provide background checks or educational backgrounds to investigators or schools that are needing that information. Okay. With that, issues or violations that our office handles, these are just a few of many. Again, we do have policies that everyone is required to understand and be informed about. Some of the policies that we have are regarding drugs, disruptions, theft, alcohol. And again, with alcohol, we want to make sure that students are aware that on campus, you should not be drinking unless you are over 21. And please note that if there are students that are living within our housing and residence life department complexes, that if alcohol is being consumed, this should be in the privacy of their own living quarters, not in the common area, for example, the living room and such. Harassment, and this in lines with what Gabriel has already discussed, but again, with harassment, it's more on not that has a sexual nature. So in this regard, if we have, for example, students that are continuously sending messages to one another when they have already been informed or asked not to, and is a continuation of things that can be, that can constitute being harassment, and students can be referred to our office. As I shared with you all already, hazing. Any residential housing cases, for example, that can be violation of contract policies, for example, having violating noise hours, for example, alcohol cases, and so on and thus far. Additionally, please note that a lot of students don't realize that our apartment and our housing, excuse me, residential apartment does allow pets if they are approved through the CAS department. So these are comfort or emotional support animals, okay? And academic dishonesty policy violations. When we talk about an overall view of these policies, please note that about 50% of our cases actually involves the violation of the academic dishonesty policy. And so I just want to make sure that we are aware of that. So again, we don't have a lot of cases as it relates to drugs, alcohol, harassment, and so on and thus far, as 50% of what we do does involve that. So with that being said, as Gabriel shared, and I'm not going to go too much in depth into this, but please note that we're all required as a university community member to know what the handbook of operating procedures is, specifically the policies that we are required to follow. Now, please note that in many times when students are referred to our office and they're asked, for example, are they aware or familiar with our academic dishonesty policy, for example, most of the time our student says, I know of the name, but I haven't read the policy. And please note that this is one of the main reasons we like to have these virtual or face-to-face presentations, because we want to make sure that students are aware of what those policies are. So we are invited, for example, to our freshman seminar courses, to talk to the students face-to-face, but also like these type of presentations, okay? Please note that overall, students can be disciplined for prohibiting conduct that occurs on or off campus, okay? This could include incidents that occur, for example, within field trips. So if a student group goes out of town with their organization or departmental, academic department organization on practicum or field trips and such, and there's a policy violation that occurs, please note that even though they're not in El Paso or that violation did not occur at UTEP, they can be disciplined for it. So again, it's our job to make sure that we are reviewing that information thoroughly to see if we have an investigation that we need to start. So in regards to the student conduct process, before we get there, I want to make sure that you all are aware that students do have rights, and they'll continue to have rights within the university, okay? Please note that within the investigation, students are not required to make any statements. However, please note that should a student choose not to make any statements, During the investigation, we will make a decision based on the information that we do have, okay? Students may be assisted by an advisor of their choice. This advisor can be an attorney, or it can be a parent, a sibling, a friend, a professor, anyone that the student chooses to have in the room. And again, they can only have one advisor. The standard of evidence that we utilize within our office in the investigation of cases is a preponderance of the evidence, which is the more likely than not, okay? So if you think about it, again, within the scale, it's 50-50, and if we don't have enough to find a student responsible, then the case will be dismissed. However, if we have enough to a little bit more than a tailgate, or more than 50 to find a student responsible based on a preponderance of the evidence, and they will be found responsible, and consequences will be assigned as it relates to that. Please note that a student can appeal the decision and or sanction that the student conduct officer, imposes for their case, okay? There is an appellant process that we have available for them. This is a flow chart of our academic dishonesty violations, okay? Please note that at the very front, and it might be a little bit difficult to read, but I'm just gonna go through this process, okay? Please note that at the beginning, a faculty member will, if they feel as though that they find a student may have violated the academic dishonesty policy, we request and ask the faculty members to refer that student to our office. Let me pause there by saying this. Faculty members are not allowed, based on our policy, to find a student responsible themselves and assign a 0 for that assignment without it being referred to our office. That is actually a violation of our policy. We want to make sure that students receive due process from start to finish. Therefore, we want to make sure, again, that the faculty member refers that case to our office, okay? Once we receive an incident report, we will review over all that case from start to finish of what we were provided, and determine if we have enough to start an investigation of that case. If we do, that is when we will create that case, open the case up, and we will then schedule a face-to-face meeting with the student, or virtual. Please note that we're still within this virtual arena. So we can have either virtual or face-to-face. And again, a student is welcome to have an advisor present. The reason we like to have meetings with students is, again, to hear their perspective in regards to what happened within the incident that they were referred to our office, okay? Now, usually at the end of that meeting, if the investigation is closed, basically we don't have to meet with anyone else, we can let the student know the decision that was made after reviewing all the information that was referred by the professor, and also the information that was disseminated or disclosed by the student, okay? The student will be informed the decision of the case, again, if they're found responsible or not, and the consequences associated with that case. If a student, again, is found not responsible, there are no consequences that will be assigned to the case, and the case will be closed out immediately. Should a student be found responsible, however, and again, they disagree with both the decision of being found responsible as well as the consequences, they have two options. They can request a university hearing, and that is usually when a student disagrees with the decision and sanctions, or they can appeal these sanctions only to the office of the president. So please note that if a student requests a hearing, again, the case will remain open until the conclusion of the hearing, and we all receive a decision from the hearing officer. Additionally, as it relates to the appeal for the office of the president, we will close out the case. However, the student will have 14 days to appeal the sanctions only to the office of the president. Let me pause there for a second and ask if we have any questions. Jessica, I don't see the chat, but I want to make sure that.
There are no questions on the chat yet.
Oh, okay, perfect.
But I have posted, if anyone has any questions on the chat, please let us know.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll go ahead and continue then.
Thank you.
So going into what are some possible sanctions, for example. So again, once a student is found, or if a student is found responsible, these are some of the consequences that can be assigned to the student. Please note, and let me pause there again by saying that, again, UTEP, at UTEP, we're very educational. We want to make sure that we are providing educational resources to students, but also providing students an opportunity to learn from a mistake that may have occurred, okay? Now, please note though, that that we need to make sure that we are doing our due diligence as it relates to the case completely from start to finish. If it's an egregious case, then the consequences would be more severe than a first-time offense, okay? And so as it relates to that, some of the consequences that will be assigned, could be assigned rather, are, for example, disciplinary probation. So what is that? Disciplinary probation is a standing with our university. It basically informs students that should they, or if they violate another policy and are found responsible for that violation, the consequences can be a lot more severe for that second case, okay? If a student is found responsible, again, for an assignment or cheating on an exam, they can receive a 0 on those assignments, or they can be assigned a failing grade in a course. They could be asked, for example, also to complete an academic integrity course. And there are times where we may not assign a failing course, but their overall course grade can be lowered by 1 letter grade, and that is the reduction of final grade. The student can be asked to write a reflection paper, be placed on warning, or again, the harshest sanctions that we have assigned in the past has been suspension or expulsion. And suspension can be, for example, for 1 semester up to a year or 2, or expulsion. And expulsion is a permanent separation of the student from our university. And one of the things that we do share with students is that if a student is suspended or expelled from UTEP, they are suspended or expelled from the UT system. So they will not be able to transfer to a UT Simpson school like Austin, San Antonio, so on and thus far. Now, in the past, students have asked, for example, can they go to Texas A&M or NMSU, for example? In that regard, again, it's not within the UT system. They can apply. However, please note that if a student is suspended or expelled, there is a comment that will be placed on their transcript, and that comment will be removed once their suspension has completed. Overall, this is our contact information. Again, should you or your family member have any questions regarding our procedure process for student conduct, or just have any questions overall as it relates to the university, please note that we are here and available to assist them. We are located in the Union Building East, room 303. That is the center of campus. And this is our phone number as well as our website, and we're also on Instagram. So please note that all programs that we have, that we're facilitating rather, will be posted on Instagram, as well as other programs that are being facilitated within UTEP overall. In that regards, that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Jovita. I'm glad to see that you all are on Instagram. It's great to make it as accessible as possible. Let me change the view here. Yeah, does anyone, I know it seems like a lot of technical information, I guess. So I'm sure it's difficult to maybe like make it, you know, pedestrian and as easily digestible as possible, but I do appreciate you both doing that. It is hard, not hard, I guess it's just, yeah, technical information, but if you all wouldn't mind putting maybe your email in the chat, and if folks have any questions, they can email you both. Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you, Jovita. But yeah, and this session is being recorded, and so we will be posting it on our YouTube, our Alumni Association YouTube page. And I do want to just quickly share our October session flyer, which is our library tour and resources. We will be meeting in person. We haven't been meeting in person for quite a while, and we've been doing these virtual sessions, but this will be our first in-person session, and we're going to be at the library and doing a tour and resources. We have Jacob Galindo and Marissa Testerman who will be assisting us with that. But if anyone has any questions, we did put those emails in the chat, and so hopefully they can feel comfortable and reach out to you both. But thank you so much for your time and energy in regard to this presentation. And if nobody has any other questions, we can go ahead and let everyone get back to their evening.
All right, thank you so much, Jessica and Jovita. Good to see you, and appreciate the invite and everyone who's here. Thank you.
Thank you all. I hope you'll have a wonderful evening, and go Miners.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.